Welcome back to Rewinding Legends, where we sift through the dusty archives of television and pop culture, only to realize that sometimes the strangest, silliest gags age into something far more unsettling. Few shows embody this phenomenon quite like The Simpsons. For more than 3 decades, Springfield has been a mirror that stretches our anxieties, mocking today only for tomorrow to echo the same lines back to us. And by 2025, the list of so-called predictions tied to this cartoon has gotten darker, more haunting, and frankly impossible to ignore. Some are real, some are hoaxes born in the chaotic petri dish of the internet. But all of them stick in our minds because they scratch at something deeper, the feeling that satire has become prophecy. Tonight we're taking a long walk through 10 of the most unnerving examples. And I promise you, by the end of this journey, you won't just be wondering if The Simpsons predicted the future. You'll be questioning why reality keeps falling in line behind a decades-old cartoon. Stick with us, and if you love revisiting the eerie overlap between TV's past and our very real present, don't forget to subscribe to Rewinding Legends and keep those notifications on. These stories are only getting stranger. Let's begin with the one that turned satire into political déjà vu. President Trump. In 2000, the episode Bart to the Future casually tossed in a gag where Lisa, as President of the United States, mentioned that her administration had inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. At the time, it was absurdist humor. Trump was a tabloid personality, a brash mogul, with cameos in sitcoms, and a reputation for bankrupt casinos, not serious political office. Audiences laughed because the very idea was ridiculous, the kind of exaggerated punchline that only works in a cartoon. Fast forward to 2016, and suddenly the world woke up to find that gag living in the headlines. Trump had been elected the 45th president, and the once-throwaway line transformed into a cultural touchstone. By 2025, the creepiness of that moment hasn't faded. It's grown. Politics in America now feels less like a civic process, and more like a never-ending spectacle where policy takes a backseat to personality. Memes fly faster than press releases, and every outrageous headline is immediately paired with a Simpsons screenshot that seems to prove the writers saw it coming decades ago. But here's the eerie truth. The gag wasn't magic. The writers simply understood the direction American politics was heading. Long before Twitter campaigns and viral slogans, they saw the circus, the merging of entertainment and government, and distilled it into a single line. That's why it felt prophetic. It was less a crystal ball and more a spotlight on our worst tendencies. And now, with another contentious election season looming in 2025, the concept of a cartoon presidency doesn't feel like a joke anymore. It feels like the framework we live inside, where every scandal, every rally, every soundbite can be matched to a punchline Springfield already told. Next up is a prediction that went from a playful background gag to a billion-dollar reality. Disney owning Fox. In 1998, during the episode When You Dish Upon a Star, a quick sight gag showed the 20th Century Fox logo, with the caption, "A division of Walt Disney Co." It was a cheeky jab at corporate mergers, meant to poke fun at Disney's growing empire. At the time, the notion was laughable. Disney and Fox were rival powerhouses with their own massive catalogs. The idea of one swallowing the other felt like cartoon exaggeration. But in 2019, laughter turned to shock when Disney acquired most of 21st Century Fox's assets in a $71 billion deal. That purchase reshaped the entertainment world, bringing beloved franchises like Avatar, X-Men, and even The Simpsons itself under Disney's umbrella. By 2025, the effects of this consolidation are inescapable. We live in a world where just a few corporations control most of the stories we consume. Streaming libraries overlap, cinematic universes bleed together, and independent studios struggle to survive in the shadow of these giants. What once read as satire now feels like a thesis paper. Springfield had pointed to the future of media monoculture long before we were living in it. And that's what makes it unsettling. It wasn't just that the joke came true, it was that the joke revealed a trajectory we couldn't or wouldn't stop. A slow march toward fewer voices controlling more of our cultural imagination. Now, let's rewind to 1995's Lisa's Wedding, an episode that gave us one of the most beloved examples of Simpsons prophecy, the smartwatch. In a scene where Lisa is grown up and engaged, Her fiancé casually raises his wrist to use his watch as a phone. At the time, it was comedy born from sci-fi fantasy. Mobile phones in the mid-90s were clunky status symbols. The idea of shrinking them down to wrist size was something out of spy thrillers, not everyday life. Yet by 2025, this once absurd gag is our normal. Smartwatches don't just make calls. They monitor heart health, track steps, serve as wallets, and even alert medical services when someone collapses. In some parts of the world, they're as essential as keys or wallets once were. What makes this prediction land so hard isn't that The Simpsons invented the concept, science fiction had played with it for decades, but that the show normalized it. They presented the idea not as a dramatic reveal, but as a casual detail in a family conversation. It was comedy that blended seamlessly with everyday life, which is exactly how these technologies eventually enter our lives. Today, when someone taps their wrist to pay for groceries or answer a text, they're echoing a joke from 30 years ago, probably without realizing it. And every time, Springfield's smirk hangs in the air, reminding us that even our smallest habits can feel like they were storyboarded in advance. Then there's the prediction that strayed into tragedy, the White Tiger attack. In the 1993 episode Springfield, the town builds a casino and one of its star acts is a flamboyant duo named Gunter and Ernst, who perform alongside a white tiger. Anyone watching knew it was a parody of Siegfried and Roy, the legendary Las Vegas performers. The gag took a dark turn when their tiger suddenly attacked on stage, leaving chaos in its wake. At the time, it was satire that drew laughs because of its absurdity. After all, Siegfried and Roy were masters of their craft, icons of Vegas entertainment. An accident seemed unthinkable. But in 2003, during a live show at the Mirage, Roy Horn was mauled by his own white tiger, critically injuring him and ending their career. Suddenly, what had been a throwaway gag looked chillingly prophetic. The reason it resonated so strongly is that The Simpsons wasn't conjuring a random accident. The writers simply amplified a truth hidden in plain sight. Wild animals are never fully predictable, no matter how well trained. The axed danger was part of its allure. The show exaggerated that risk for laughs, but when reality delivered tragedy, the satire became prophecy in retrospect. Today, that episode is remembered not as a joke, but as one of the eeriest examples of Springfield colliding with reality. Our next stop takes us to the voting booth. In 2008, during the Halloween special Treehouse of Horror 19, Homer goes to vote for Barack Obama, only for the electronic machine to flip his vote to John McCain again and again. The gag escalates until the machine malfunctions and sucks Homer inside. At the time, it was dark comedy poking fun at the public's paranoia about electronic voting. Voting machines were relatively new, and skepticism about their reliability was already in the air. People laughed because it was ridiculous, but the fear behind it was real. And in the years that followed, videos began to circulate during real elections of machines that appeared to flip votes on screen. Election officials usually chalked it up to calibration errors, but the optics were disastrous. Each clip fed conspiracy theories and chipped away at trust in the system. By 2025, with another heated election season underway, the gag feels less like comedy and more like commentary. Even minor glitches are enough to dominate headlines, spread across social media, and fuel endless debate about whether democracy's very core is under threat. The Simpsons didn't predict a specific event. It tapped into the unease of trusting machines with something sacred. That unease has only grown, making Homer's malfunctioning voting booth less of a joke and more of a symbol of how fragile public trust has become. And then we reach the darkest chapter, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. On September 10, 2025, Kirk was shot during a speech at Utah Valley University, a moment that instantly sent shockwaves through the country. Within hours, social media exploded with claims that The Simpsons had predicted it. Circulating online were images and supposed clips of a character resembling Kirk being shot at a rally. Whether those frames ever aired mattered less than the perception. For millions, it became another example of Springfield's eerie foresight. The truth is more complicated. The Simpsons has always trafficked in dark humor, showing riots, scandals, even assassinations as part of its satire. That made it believable that such a scene could exist, and in the haze of grief and outrage, people reached for the myth. This is what makes it haunting. Unlike lighter predictions like smartwatches or Nobel Prizes, this one wasn't funny. It was horrifying. It showed how deeply the show has embedded itself into our imagination. In moments of tragedy, people instinctively ask, did The Simpsons already show us this? That reflex keeps the myth alive, turning even the gravest events into a strange kind of prophecy. But in 2025, the age of deepfakes has blurred this line even further. For years, fans shared real Simpsons jokes that later seemed prophetic. But now, AI can generate fake Simpsons clips so convincing that millions share them without hesitation. Entire accounts are dedicated to producing these forgeries, and within hours of any major event, a celebrity scandal, a political assassination, even a natural disaster, a Simpsons prediction appears online. These fakes look authentic, complete with the art style and humor of the show. And in the digital age, perception often outweighs truth. If it looks right, people believe it. This has turned The Simpsons into the perfect canvas for hoaxes, a myth-making machine where satire and disinformation merge. In a way, the writers foresaw this too. For decades, Springfield has portrayed worlds where media was manipulated, where truth was distorted, and where the public bought into obvious lies. Back then, those storylines felt exaggerated. Now, they read like documentation. By 2025, the predictions are no longer just about events. They're about how we process them, through memes, through fakes, through the warped funhouse mirror of the internet. Still, not all of these predictions are born in chaos. Some are precise, verifiable, and strangely charming. In the 2010 episode Elementary School Musical, Milhouse participates in a Nobel Prize betting pool and chooses Ben Holmstrom, an obscure economist. It seemed like a nerdy joke, the kind of background flavor the show loved to slip in. But in 2016, Holmstrom actually won the Nobel Prize in Economics for his work on contract theory. Fans quickly unearthed the clip, stunned by the accuracy. This wasn't a hoax, and it wasn't a coincidence stretched too far. It was a clean, verifiable prediction. The truth is that many Simpsons writers come from elite academic backgrounds. They know their economics, math, and science, and they often sprinkle references into the show that most viewers miss. To them, Holmstrom wasn't random. He was a respected figure who could plausibly win. The gag was an insider nod that aged into revelation. And that's what makes it so fascinating. When Springfield's nerdy humor lines up with reality, it feels less like prophecy and more like sharp, educated comedy that simply got validated by history. Another prediction hit closer to home, literally. In the 1999 Halloween special Treehouse of Horror 10, the segment House of Wax introduced a smart home voiced by Pierce Brosnan. The house could cook, clean, adjust the temperature, and even flirt with Marge. But in typical Simpsons fashion, it soon turned sinister, becoming controlling, manipulative, and murderous. At the time, it was a parody of futuristic gadget obsession. Today, it feels disturbingly close to reality. By 2025, smart homes are everywhere. Voice assistants answer commands, refrigerators keep shopping lists, thermostats learn habits, and doorbell cameras record everything outside. While our devices aren't plotting to kill us, they do quietly collect data on our daily lives. That data is stored, sold, sometimes hacked, and occasionally used in legal investigations. Stories of hacked baby monitors or strangers speaking through compromised cameras remind us that the trade-off for convenience is control. The Simpsons gag exaggerated the danger, but the insight was real. Every new device that makes life easier demands something in return. By 2025, the idea that your house knows more about you than your neighbors do isn't satire anymore. It's the trade we've accepted. Finally, let's talk about money that doesn't exist in your wallet. In the 1997 episode My Sister, My Sitter, a background gag featured a magazine cover about virtual money. At the time, it was an absurdity, a playful poke at science fiction. But in 2009, Bitcoin arrived, and by the 2010s, cryptocurrency had become a buzzword. By the early 2020s, digital currencies were shaking global finance, creating and destroying fortunes overnight. Governments that once dismissed crypto as a fad began experimenting with central bank digital currencies. By 2025, cashless payments are so common that whole cities are testing systems without physical money. When The Simpsons leaned into crypto again in a 2013 episode featuring Jim Parsons explaining Bitcoin, the connection only deepened. Looking back, the 1997 gag feels almost visionary. It didn't predict Bitcoin specifically, but it tapped into a cultural drift toward digital dependence. Today, when millions pay with their phones or watches, they're living in a world Springfield hinted at decades ago. And that's the brilliance. Not that the show guessed the details, but that it understood the trajectory. It exaggerated the present just enough for reality to eventually catch up. So where does that leave us? Did The Simpsons really predict the future? Or are we just bending reality to match our favorite jokes? The answer lies somewhere in between. With more than 750 episodes covering nearly every human folly imaginable, statistical chance guarantees some will line up with reality. Add in smart, educated writers who weave in clever references, and the odds get better. Mix in the internet's love of hoaxes, and suddenly the show seems prophetic even when it isn't. But the real reason these moments haunt us is simpler. The Simpsons is a funhouse mirror, exaggerating what's already true, pushing anxieties to their extreme, and then waiting for the world to catch up. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes decades. But when it happens, it feels like prophecy. And in 2025, when reality often feels stranger than fiction, that funhouse mirror might be the most honest reflection we have. Thank you for joining me on this eerie rewind through Springfield's scariest predictions. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit subscribe, share Rewinding Legends with a friend, and let me know in the comments which Simpsons prediction haunts you the most. Because if the past 3 decades have taught us anything, it's that the next prophecy is already waiting in syndication.